Just a quick one on Ireland. Andy diagnosed Bundee with a rumbling knee injury. He said rumbling knee. We didn't get it, but you shed any light on that? I presume the medical staff are always in touch across that.
Yeah, I've not had an update on it actually. I was aware he wasn't going to be playing, and similar explanation. So no, I don't have any further details on that. And I presume it's just all part of the bumps and bruises of the campaign so far. But if we get anything, we'll certainly share it.
Yeah, good shift by Finlay yesterday. What did you make of the match, and what do you think of the Six Nations so far in terms of quality? Maybe a bit of a disparity between what Ireland are doing and what the rest of them are doing.
Yeah, look, obviously, another really impressive win for Ireland. I think, as you mentioned, Finlay, I was delighted for him. Delighted he got the start, and I thought he really seized the opportunity. So, particularly around that scrum against Italian packs that generally have been particularly strong in that area. So really pleased for Finlay. I think Ireland have shown their class. I think they've shown that they're probably really clear on what the next chapter looks like for them. I think that was going to be the big challenge after the World Cup, is not just lifting everyone emotionally, but actually working out what the next target is. And I think you see from the intensity and the clarity that they're playing with, that they're already aligned on that next step of the journey. And the French are probably in a similar position of disappointment, but maybe haven't quite clicked with that I suppose embracing the next chapter. So no, they've been really impressive, Ireland, and there's obviously bigger tests to come, but it'll be an exciting next 3 rounds, I think.
You're an adopted Irishman now, and you're in the system. You've obviously gone on tour coaching with Ireland as well. What's it like for your allegiances when Ireland play England, or even watching England get to a semi-final? I presume in the semi-final you're dying for them to win as well.
Oh yeah, look, I'm always interested in how England are going. I think I'm so ingrained in the Irish system now, and sort of Irish way of life really. It's 7th year here, so I think particularly having worked with some of those guys on that New Zealand tour, as you said, you're desperate to see Ireland do well, and to see Connacht interest in there as well just adds to that. So we're all immensely proud of the journey the team's been on, and hopefully that continues.
Just a quick word on maybe some of the returning players that you'll have available this week. Obviously, it adds a bit of freshness to the squad again, and a boost going into the match at the weekend. Yeah,
it does. Like we'd earmark this Cardiff week, and then in a couple of weeks' time the Scarlets week, when we'll actually get a fair bunch of players back who've been on that kind of medium-term injury list. So look, it's adding to competitiveness at training, and they've got bags of energy and are ready to go. So although this second half of the season is a little bit more broken up, we'll need those reinforcements, particularly when we get towards the an away game at Benetton, and the Challenge Cup game at Po, and then if we have another knockout game the following week, we'll certainly need the fresh bodies. So, they're a welcome return, and as I said, they're desperate to make their mark on this second half of the season.
Just the last one for me, Cardiff they're within touching distance, so a win for either side kind of creates a space, or we get you right in the mix. What are you expecting from them? What are their main threats?
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge for us. I always feel Cardiff and Connacht are sort of fighting for similar spots on the ladder at the end of the season. We're always pushing hard to try to get into that top 8, and I think as a result, our games against each other tend to have a pretty big sway on how each other's season plays out. So, look, there are a few points behind us at the minute, but they've been picking up bonus points consistently this season. I think they've got a really aggressive defence, which will challenge us. It'll challenge us in terms of our skills under pressure, that line speed that they bring, but also our decision making about when to run, when to kick, particularly away from home. So I think that'll be a really interesting battle, our attack against their defence. They don't play with a huge amount of possession, tend to kick a fair bit out of their own half, but even so, they're pretty efficient at getting the points with the possession they get. So look, it's a good challenge for us actually, and you can earmark this as a game that if we're serious about getting that top 8 spot or a top 4 spot, these are the games that we should be winning. But at the same time, it's a massive challenge, particularly away from home. So I'm excited by it. I think the whole group is, and we feel as if we're ready for a game.
Pete, Simon here. Can I ask you a couple of questions? If that's okay?
Yeah, of course, Simon.
Every team now has played half of their URC games, kind of so at the kind of midway stage of the season. What would be your own kind of half-term report on how Connacht's league season has gone?
Look, I think we're tracking all right. We're certainly not ahead of schedule. I had an idea of the amount of competition points I'd won out of those first 9 games. We're probably 1 bonus point behind where I'd like us to be ideally. Obviously you'd love to be up in the top 4 or the top 8 and sitting pretty up there. But I think with the nature of the draw, 7 of those games are against top half teams in the first half of our season. So I think we've done really well in patches, particularly that first quarter of the season. And, we had a tough spot coming back from Africa combined with those Champions Cup games. So I feel like we've got a bit of an even ledger, but I'm still optimistic about the season to come. And for that to materialise, we've got to win games and obviously win games in the second half of the season. And the run we've got to pick up points against those teams that are around us, and Cardiff are obviously one of them.
Cardiff have only won the 3 games this season, but if you look at the matches they've lost in the URC, they've all been one-score games. I think Matt Sherrod has said no one is leaving early. It's every game seems to go down to the wire, so they're very competitive. But they are losing a lot of players away to Wales, which in a way is good for them, but obviously as a negating factor on there. This time of the season, is it quite difficult for a coach? Because sometimes you're almost working with 2 different squads, or perhaps is it less of an impact on yourselves?
Yeah, it's certainly less of an impact on ourselves. We've obviously got the 2 lads away in Finley and Bundee, and Mac Hansen, who would have been away but's injured. So we're probably less disrupted than some of the teams, and certainly less disrupted than Cardiff. It gives us a bit of continuity and certainly gives us more bodies to work with in terms of preparation. At the same time, you sort of have the challenge in terms of trying to analyse the opposition, and we build a pretty decent picture, I suppose, of what we think Cardiff's personality is as a team and their strengths and maybe some opportunities playing against them. But then you see, certain key names that aren't there. For all the planning in the world, you can't be too sure as to what type of game you're going to get. I think the other thing for Cardiff is there are guys that don't go away with that international team that have been incredibly important for them, over many years, particularly in the midfield there. And so some threats remain and some are a little bit more unknown. So it adds a level of intrigue to it. I guess we prepare with on the back of the games we've seen, but until the actual team announcement comes through, you're never quite sure who the matchups are going to be.
And just lastly from me, the Arms Park, is that a ground you enjoy going to? How have you fared over the years?
Look, I love going there. I think as a team we really enjoy going there because it is hostile and it feels like the crowd are right on top of you. The away coaches' seats are right in the thick of it, amongst the fans, and I think that brings a brilliant atmosphere and a real edge to the occasion. I think obviously being in Six Nations time, there's even more of a sort of rugby fever around the city, which is fantastic. That said, it's a really tough place to play. I think the crowd there, obviously get right behind that Cardiff side. I think they respond to that. And I think when you do hit speed bumps in games, it can be quite easy to lose your way and sort of feel the noise and pressure on top of you. So that's a key bit of what we'll talk about this week in terms of staying calm under pressure, but also making sure we've got a real clarity about how we want to play the game. And I think if we have that, then regardless of the atmosphere, we've got something to connect to and hopefully get us some success.
Hi Pete, it's William here. I'm just wondering how you've had a decent break now after the Bristol game. You've been had a holiday and then you've had 2 weeks to get ready for this. How have you actually set up to just play one game and then you got to stop again and start again and stop again? It's a very odd sort of part of the season for that.
Yeah, it's definitely a very different rhythm. The way we've approached it, as you said, the players and coaches had a week off, which was much needed after that 13-game run. The last 2 weeks we've approached as a bit of a mini pre-season in some ways. So we've really focused on some of the aspects of our game that we know we need to improve on if we're going to continue growing and continue to be competitive in the second half of the season. So we've had 2 weeks to really focus on ourselves, and with that hopefully becomes some improvement. But also it means that we then hit this Cardiff week with a degree of freshness mentally, ready to sort of latch on to the game plan and the strategy for the week. So that's the way we've handled these 3 weeks. I think after this, the Scarlets week's a little bit different, because it's only the 1 week between games. You almost approach it as a fortnight block and have a genuine 2 week lead into that Scarlets game. So there's different ways, I suppose, of managing the tempo of this period. At the same time, I think that the biggest hook is how important these games are for us in terms of getting results, particularly these next two. They're games that we've got to take the initiative, and we've got to get competition points from if we're going to maintain a challenge in the second half of the season. So I think that in itself brings a focus and probably brings an urgency, despite not having the week-to-week attrition that we had in the first half of the season.
Just looking at the Six Nations, look, Ireland have done very well. They've played very well, but Bundee had a big game last week. But talking about Finley's performance yesterday, that looked a very solid effort around the park and in the scrum. He'd had a busy week because his wife had a baby, so he's got the extended family now. But that looked a very solid, put my hands up to start against Wales type of performance.
Yeah, I'd agree with all the above. It was obviously a massive week for him personally, and to round it off with a performance like that, we were all delighted for him. I think what Finley's shown off the bench consistently is that he belongs at that level, and that he can not just sort of survive at international level, but he can really contribute to the team's performance. And obviously, when you're coming on in the second half or for the final quarter of games, there's always a bit of a context that's already prepared for you, and you're kind of coming in and hopefully contributing to that. Whereas that chance for him to start and generally impose himself on the game, is just a brilliant opportunity. I think the key challenge for him was to show that growth and that expertise and probably maturity he's now got around the set piece. But still maintain his impact and his dynamism in general play, whether that's carrying the ball or linking in play, or as a really dynamic defender, which he is for a tight head prop. And I just thought he managed to merge those two things really well. He certainly didn't look out of place. And probably the change with Tom O'Toole coming on probably came at the right time in terms of some fresh legs for Finley for the shift he put in. But no, I thought he was really impressive. And it's a neat challenge now for Andy Farrell in terms of how he uses all those tight heads.
He wouldn't fancy sending him back to Connacht for a quick 35 minutes or so in Cardiff next Saturday night.
Yeah, he'd always be welcome. Yeah.
Just one final thing as well. This time now, you're into the second part of the season, second half, probably has a slightly different feel to it. Do things become a bit more settled in the selection policy? If a player has the position maybe as a starter and they're fit and ready to go, maybe less rotation now. It's harder maybe to get in if you're on the outside of maybe the 25, 26 players.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I think the nature of the gaps between games means you're probably not having to freshen up the group, and even guys that are playing well, they've got time to recharge and be managed between games that they can go again. So I think there's probably less rotation from that point of view. The guys that have bumps and bruises that might normally rule them out of training on a Monday and maybe a Tuesday that sees them rotated, they've got that bit longer to get over it as well. So I think, just the nature of the fitness of the fixture list will contribute towards less rotation. I think as well, by this stage, you've obviously got a really clear idea of what you need out that second half of the season. So, it's not that every game's must win, but there's definitely more of an edge to the outcomes. And again, with that, if you're in doubt, you probably go with the guys that have already delivered for you. And we'll probably see our selection start to settle a bit with that. That said, you've got to respect performance. And if guys aren't delivering, and there's other players that are tearing up trees at training, then sometimes you've got to back your gut, I think, and give those guys an opportunity. So we'll pick the best possible team that we can for what we think can beat Cardiff, and then we'll reflect from there.